So how old are you, by the way? You look young.
I am 25, yeah.
Wow. Congratulations on all your success.
Thank you, appreciate it.
At the age of 25.
Thank you.
Are you primarily wholesaling or fix and flipping?
I'm not. I would say I'm doing right now probably like 60% fix and flip, 40% wholesale. Been switching a little bit more wholesale as of recent, the past couple of years, just for obvious reasons. Market's changed a little bit. But I started off wholesaling, then I got probably to the point where I was doing 90% flipping. Now I'm kind of like bringing it back to a little bit more of a 50-50 split. That's my goal.
How many are you doing this past year, 2024?
Past year in total, we did, 64.
Holy cow.
Not bad.
That's awesome.
Yeah, not too bad.
So you're doing like over 20 flips, over 30 flips.
We did over 30 flips, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Man, that's so much coordination.
It is. It is. It's a lot. And there's some learning lessons in there for sure as well.
What's the biggest learning lesson from this past year?
First off, the biggest thing was like how many moving parts there were. As you start to scale, just because you scale doesn't mean you are going to necessarily make more money. That was a big lesson that I learned. I actually ended up, I had a partner and we were no longer together. And that was one of the big things I learned last year was like, okay, like who you choose to work with, nothing against my partner or anything like that, but like for me, it just didn't make the most sense. So like who you choose to work with is crucial. And that had a huge impact on me. So I think the biggest thing was like making sure that as you grow, as you do scale, because the sexy word is scale, like make sure you do it, appropriately. Make sure you're having like the root being like profitability. So
man, it's super common that partnerships don't work out in the long run.
For sure.
I feel like a lot of people, and I don't want to speak for your case, but a lot of people do jump in because they are inexperienced. They feel like partnering up with somebody will just be like moral support. But once you guys get going and you don't need that moral support anymore, you guys might have different work ethics, right? So like, or you just want two different things. Maybe somebody wants like a nice, relaxing lifestyle and somebody else wants to scale.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a big tension point.
It is.
It seems like it always happens just because people want two different things.
Absolutely. And that was the same thing. So I started when I was younger, pretty much right when I graduated, I started. So I was, 22. And I didn't have enough faith in myself to where it's like, yeah, I can go do this full time. You kind of wanted that support, like you said, just like, even if it's mental, just somebody that, in my case, had money, had a little bit more experience, and I thought it made sense.
Well, it's lonely too. I mean,
it is.
If you're like going at it alone, so it's nice to have somebody to at least go through the journey with in the beginning phases.
Absolutely. Yeah, and like bounce things off, things like that. So that was big. And then as we grew and stuff, we, like you said, we had different goals of where we wanted to take it, and ended up just not making the most sense. So.
Got it.
Restarted about halfway through the year last year on my own, and now I'm just kind of like starting from scratch per se, back over from, we let most of our staff go, most of the team go, and starting fresh again. So it's been about 5 to 6 months doing that.
Okay. Well, congratulations on making it through that.
Appreciate it.
It's only up from there, I imagine.
It is, yeah. I mean, once you learn the skill set, that's the biggest thing. Like I have enough confidence now to where it's like, you can go plop me somewhere and I'll be able to figure it out, just because I've done it enough times. And so like having that confidence is helpful because it's the same thing, it's, doing flips and wholesaling and things like that. It's simple, it's not easy, but it's repeatable. So that's kind of like what I'm just trying to grow it back up again.
When you were 22, you were maybe if you went to college, a couple years out of college, right? Did you have a job at that point?
Yeah, so I graduated UCF, University of Central Florida, at 2021, in 2021. And I graduated with a pre-med degree. So I was gonna go to med school. Decided that I didn't want to go to school for another 4 years and then have residency and be 30-something before I started making any money.
Hey, I'm 30. But
okay, nothing against you old guys. Just kidding. No, nothing against that. But I was like, man, I'd rather, start doing something now before I go down that path because I could always go back to it. So I decided to start getting into real estate, did like my first deal at like my senior year, second semester, and then started.
You didn't wait.
I didn't.
Yeah.
Well, it was also like the COVID era too. So like I was like, okay, I'm sitting here kind of doing not a whole lot. Going on YouTube, seeing people make this wholesaling thing. I'm like, okay, that sounds interesting. Did that and then didn't look back.
Got it. Well, was it hard?
It was super hard.
Where'd you get your first deal from?
I drove around and called somebody off True People Search, got their address, True People searched them, got it under contract, didn't know what I was doing, posted it on Facebook, found a buyer.
That's pretty easy.
It was one of those things where it kind of like just lined up and was a little bit easier than what it should have been, but at least I had proof of concept, and then from there it got a lot harder.
How much did you make on that first deal?
It was like $13,000.
That's a lot.
It was.
What's the total price of that house?
It was $275.
Okay.
It was what I sold it for.
Yeah.
So
nice.
$262.
Was it in really bad shape?
It was a pretty beater. I mean, it wasn't crazy. Like
Yeah.
now I'd say it's like a $40,000-$50,000 rehab. Nothing too crazy, but it needed some love.
Got it. What's the average price in this area?
Median home price is around $450, give or take. So yeah, it's a little bit under, which is where I like to stay below median house price whenever we do our fix and flips and wholesales even, just because it's easier to move stuff.
So did that seller know they could have sold it for $400 if they fixed it up?
100%.
But they didn't want to?
Well, maybe not like the exact price, but they knew they could have gotten more. Even now in like our sales process and everything, like I've always been like, I'm not going to be the most amount of money for you. You know, like, this is the easy button.
It really takes the pressure off when you come up front and say that.
Right.
And it also gets rid of tire kickers.
100%.
People that just want a valuation of their home but don't really want to sell their house.
100%.
Yeah.
So
they're not going to be as interested if you tell them that.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was, try to be upfront and transparent about it.
Where'd you learn that?
Honestly, it was just what felt natural. I didn't know like a sales process or anything. I could just like, I don't like lying. So I wanted to be transparent with them. Here's my goal. I mean, I didn't say like, yeah, I'm going to go make $13,000 kind of thing. But it's like, if you want to go this route, you'd make more money.
Right.
So they liked me, I guess, enough. And then got under contract and sold it to an investor.
So there's just general Facebook Marketplace posts that you made? That was like
in the groups.
You had photos of the house, I guess?
I had photos, videos, all that stuff.
Got it.
And then it was, 2021 was a little different time. So like it was pretty hot. Posted in there. Some guys DM'd me. I did like a walkthrough with them all or whatever. I got all this from YouTube. I'm just guessing at this point.
Yeah.
And then it worked. So that's how I didn't get screwed, fortunately. No.
And you had a 2-week closing on that?
No, it was like 5 weeks or something. It was a little bit longer.
It is a little bit longer. Did they need a loan or something, or why did they?
I think they were already planning to move, so they kind of had like that squared away, and so that wasn't for at least another month, and they wanted to stay there until pretty much the point of moving.
So the seller just didn't want to go that fast.
Correct. Yeah, it was the seller, not the buyer.
Where were they moving to?
Like Texas, actually.
Why did they have to do that?
It's a job or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it just didn't keep the home up, so he needed to go and not worry about it.
Correct. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, so you're 22, you got this deal done. It seems like you did it alone.
I did.
Right?
Yeah, that one.
What happened next?
So then I was big on like networking as much as I could.
Yeah.
So I would go to meetups, I would try to chat with people, and I wanted to make this, a business, a job. So then I was talking with people, found my current partner who was doing the fix and flip thing, right? He didn't really wholesale as much. And he had more money than I did. He would make more sense. Well, not my current partner, my ex-partner, I should say.
Yeah.
But he had more money, he had more resources. And so I was like, hey, I'm better, sales is like something that I'm interested in. What if I come do this for you? We could partner up and then kind of grow this thing, with the big, hairy, audacious goal of like doing whatever, 100 deals a year, something big.
What did you see using the money for? Because usually wholesaling is kind of like just a sales game, It's
For
like
sure.
If you hustle out there, you get the prize.
I wanted to fix and flip.
Yeah.
And so I was like,
okay.
So he has the backing, right?
Yeah.
Like he could front some marketing, he could front like the operational side of thing. Like, I had pretty much next to no money. So it was just like a fast track for me. At least that's what I thought it was.
Yeah.
Which it was helpful, in the long run, looking back.
Yeah.
Like I gained confidence.
I mean, you still did deals and you got paid for those deals, right? So it probably wasn't like terrible, right? With the split up and everything.
Right.
It sounds like maybe you had some staff, some full-time staff that went with him or went elsewhere.
Well, yeah.
With the split up?
We did, yep. So we got to the point where we had a project manager, a crew. We had 2 acquisition specialists, 1 dispo, and then a couple lead managers. So, we were doing a decent amount of deals. And then what happened was, 2023, we were going buy crazy, right? We were buying a lot of properties because we're like, we can't lose, it had been pretty decent. And then we bought a bunch, so our Kiavi payments monthly got up to the point where it was like $30,000, $40,000. We were just sitting on a bunch of inventory. And then—
Wow, 30, 40 it was
crazy.
Month. And then, you hadn't flipped them yet, so you weren't getting money.
We just thought we couldn't lose, right? So what I didn't plan for is that takes a lot of cash, obviously, so cash flow in general, especially then when wholesale deals start falling through. And then that's like your cash, right? So then what would happen was we had a lot of product.
A very profitable business quickly became zero profit.
Yes,
yeah,
for sure.
High stress.
And then not to mention the price point on a lot of these were like $600,000-$700,000, which is like, you got to have a good product to sell. And then when interest rates rose, those buyers are a lot more picky. They want to come back down to like that median house price or below. And so we had a hard time moving that product. So this past summer with everything, I ended up splitting and then also losing a lot of money. So it was a
Did
great
you
learning lesson.
share the losses with him?
We did, yeah.
And so what did that look like? Like fire selling properties?
Yeah, it did. I personally lost $250,000. So for me, it was, and so $500,000, I guess, between the two of us. It was a thing of like making sure that everybody got paid out. All of our investors never lost a dime. It was on us. And then it was one of those things where it's like, do you keep like the bleeding going or you just cut your losses? And so I know one property, it was sitting on the market for 100 and something days. In Sanford, it was like listed at $699. We dropped it to like $625. Ended up selling it for like $580 or something like that. So it was a big loss, a couple of those.
Yeah.
And those hurt. Those hurt.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
I'm a lot better for it now.
Yeah.
And it's done, but it's part of it.
At that time, were you doing more flips than wholesales?
We were.
And so that's why you're doing more wholesales now.
Yeah.
Right? It's like faster cash. It's not risky in the same sense where you don't have a loan out there.
Right.
You have to pay while it's being fixed and flipped.
Right.
Yeah.
100%.
So you don't have the holding costs.
Right.
So it's way less risky on the wholesaling side.
For sure. And
what drove you to the flipping side in the first place?
I mean, so I also got started at a really weird time, right? During COVID, when the market was going crazy, it's hard to even lose money in the COVID era, right? You could get something locked up at 95% of ARV and sell it for 105% just because the market was going crazy. So it made everyone think they're really good, myself included.
Yeah.
And then when things got, a little bit more challenging.
You just hold it for 6 months and it's worth more.
Exactly.
Without even doing anything.
Exactly. I'm like, you make 20 grand just holding it. So I thought, I was like, man, I can't lose, right?
Yeah.
So then we're just grow. But what would happen is we finally got caught with our pants down, and it was a tough season. And then also, when you're flipping, right, in those areas where things were hot, your product didn't have to be the best. I'll be honest with you. Like, we wanted it to look good, but at the same time, you didn't have to have anything that was like, wow, Now it's a little bit different story. Like, you got to have the best product at the best prices to get that stuff moved. Well, when the interest rates rose, we were stuck with this stuff that we thought, a quick 30 grand turned into, let's lose 30, 40, 50 on something. So big switch.
Got it. Well, I'm sorry you had to go through that, man.
It's all good.
The good thing is dwelling on it does zero good.
Right.
And it's all about what you do going forward.
That's right.
It sounds like you've adjusted your strategy.
For sure.
Are you at a point where you need like a project manager, kind of like you had before with those full-time people?
Yeah. So I have
It's
one
30
crew.
is a whole lot, man.
It is.
Who's managing all that?
Oh, it was.
That's
it was
crazy.
done.
Even one person can do that.
It is.
Yeah.
And that's half our issue, right?
Yeah.
It's like there's too many moving pieces. We weren't dialed enough. Our systems and processes weren't good enough. Right now I have a project manager, but we're very specific on the deals we do. So like I have 4 that are listed right now that all of them are listed below $250,000, and they're pretty cosmetic.
Okay.
Right. I'm not doing those full guts anymore.
Yeah.
I'm pretty particular with the ones I do buy. So that's like our strategy right now is trying to, easier flips if I do take them down. And then the scarier, bigger stuff, I'm going to wholesale and get rid of.
Got it.
So that's my plan as of now.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah.
If you're going to flip it, at least make sure it's like going to be simple and not going to be drug out for a long time or hard to sell potentially.
Right. Yeah.
Nice.
Make sure it moves.
Yeah. Man, I would say like the darkest hour of my entrepreneurial journey was like we had 4 years of kind of like rocket ship growth at DealMachine. And then when you do something meaningful, I felt like a lot of people came out with like 9 different apps that were very similar. We had a lot of people referring their YouTube audience to us, but some of that got fragmented for a bit. And it really did stress me out, and I didn't handle it well, meaning like I just like worked more, but I like didn't talk to any peers or really reach out to like any mentors because I was kind of like embarrassed, and it was I realized like I kind of spent my whole 20s building my business, and I didn't really like have anything else that I identified with. So I kind of had to go on a journey of like I'm gonna focus on myself first before I try to fix my business or help my employees or customers. I was like, I'm gonna get sleep, eat well, work out. And just kind of had to regain personal confidence. But I feel like if something happened again, like I wouldn't really make that mistake a second time. I don't know if you experienced anything like that, but it was reminding me of like, man, what a time that was.
Yeah. And that's tough.
And for any entrepreneur, I think that hasn't had a big downturn is at risk of having their personal identity tied up in their business.
Absolutely. And I still struggle with it, but like you said, you were able to learn from it and grow from it, right? And then you wouldn't make the same mistakes again.
Yeah.
So it's almost like checkpoints along the way.
Yeah.
Like that's part of it, you know, and you got to accept that.
It certainly also made me want to keep more rental properties too.
Yeah.
And that way I could make sure I was like, oh, this wouldn't be a big of a deal if everything else went away.
Right.
Because I have all these assets generating cash flow.
That's big.
So it was another thing that I took away from that was instead of trying to make the profit now, I'd rather set myself up for like good assets that are going to protect me from something like that. When I hold those, though, I don't feel like they're at risk like a flip. Mm-hmm. Right? Well, because they're income producing.
Right.
And they're not as high end.
Right.
So in Indianapolis, at least, like the rents don't really like fluctuate, and the interest rate doesn't fluctuate either.
Right.
Yeah. So
that makes sense.
that's kind of how I've recovered from that. That was like 3 or 4 years ago.
Right. Which that's great. I mean, that's another big thing about this business that I feel like a lot of people don't talk about as much is you hear these companies, they're like, yeah, you know, we have $100,000 months all the time, whatever the case may be. But what you don't know is like, okay, that was in May. And then June, you're at $50,000, but guess what? Your overhead's $80,000.
Right.
So it's like, okay, you lose $30,000 one month, then you make 100, because then you make, I don't know, 20, 30. So it's like, there's a lot of cash flow issues that we started to fall, you know, guilty of as well. And so what would happen is it's a roller coaster. And so some months you're on top of the world. Next months, when you have a bunch of marketing, a bunch of employees, a bunch of things like that, you're losing money. You know, so it's just this crazy roller coaster that we rode, and that I'm trying to avoid when I build it up again.
Got it. So are there any other steps you're taking other than, hey, let's not do all flips? You know, what are some of the other steps you're taking, if anything, to make sure that doesn't happen again?
Yeah, so a big thing was like cost per deal, you know, and like marketing. So marketing in general is going up, right? Like cost per deal, you can talk across the board, has gone up, right? And profits may have even come down.
What is it? What is the average marketing expense for you?
For us, our cost per deal right now is around $5,000.
Okay, that's good that you know that.
Yeah, on paid sources, right? But what I'm doing now is really focusing on building a referral network, right? To where we get deals from realtors, deals from just referrals in general that are quote unquote free, right? So that we can sustain even if marketing does go up.
How do you do that?
So we focus on going and talking with realtors, networking with realtors, and really like that's gonna be a big push for us in 2025.
Nice.
Is working with the realtor community.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like there's always been like a mix between or a big line across the sand in regards to like investors and realtors. Like I want to mix it, you know, and like do deals with them because they come across ugly properties too, right?
Yeah.
So that's a big push.
When you say do deals with them, are they listing it as an agent, or how are they getting paid?
So what we do is if we market to the realtor or we talk with the realtors, we're like, listen, if you bring us a deal, we'll pay you up front, you know, depending on the property. Most of the time we say like 1% up front. We'll fix the property and then give you the full listing on the back end. Or in some cases, if we wholesale it, we'll make sure they get paid a wholesale fee or an assignment fee.
Nice.
That would be similar to them listing it on the back end in like ARV condition. So that's worked well for us because a lot of realtors just don't want to deal with these ugly properties. Like they want to list MLS ready stuff. When they see an ugly duckling, they're like, I don't want to deal with that.
Well, sure. They're not going to sell it for as high, and they're not going to make as much money either.
Right.
So it is kind of like not a good product market fit for what they do well.
Right.
To show pretty homes
Exactly.
for retail buyers.
Exactly.
Nice.
So that's a big push for us.
Yeah. Back to the $5,000. Like, what are you spending that on?
Right now, we're bigger on the PPC. We have a lot of PPC, PPO. We do some direct mail. We did some cold calling. So we're kind of dropping that a little bit.
Okay.
I like to focus more on like inbound channels.
Yeah.
Just because it makes it a lot easier.
When they call, they are interested.
Right.
Right.
And not as much lead management. You know, when I first got started and we were growing, we did all the cold calling, texting and stuff. And that's a lot of management in regards to like filtering through leads.
Because the volume's higher.
Right.
Of who's calling you back or who's having a conversation with you.
Correct.
Got it.
Yep.
But cold calling is good for people that are starting out.
Oh, 100%.
Because it's like cheap. It's like the cheapest way.
It's the best
right?
way to go.
Yeah.
It's the best way to go. That's what I say if anybody's starting, they don't have a ton of money, bar none, cold calling route.
Got it.
Yeah. So
interesting.
As you grow and as you scale, it's like there's different dragons in regards to, okay, do you want to deal with more leads and like a lot more management to get more deals? Or do you want to like deal with inbound channels, which is a little bit less is more kind of thing for us? What
would you say is like the big goal with it for you now that you're on your own again?
I want to build a company back up to where we're doing around 100 deals a year. Build a more of a rental portfolio. I sold a lot of it in the partnership, and build something that's a little bit more sustainable in that regard, so that I'm not put back in the position of having to start from scratch again.
Yeah.
You know, kind of like you were talking about. So that'll be like part 2 of building everything.
What is like a specific of like what 100 deals a year would like provide for you? You know, because you said yourself like, hey, sometimes when you scale, it's like not more profitable.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think you'd probably want to do that in a way that'd be more profitable, right?
Right.
But what would the money mean for you? What is it really like?
Yeah.
What drives you?
Yeah. So that's, I mean, what I want to do with it in regards to, you know, I want to be able to just do things that I'm interested in regards to entrepreneurship in general. I don't know if I'll be in the real estate game forever, but I like business. So I want to be able to, like, you know, take at bats at things I'm interested in. But I think that this business is awesome for building cash. And so personally, like, my goal is like, okay, what business can I build that will net me $1 million a year, and then kind of work backwards from that. So that's my goal in building this round 2.
Any other exciting businesses you can talk about?
Not honestly.
Kind of like,
I always have some. I always have some, but what I've been really bad at, especially in, like, you know, my earlier 20s, is just like not focusing. And I think that's been a part of, like, it taking a little bit longer to get where I want to go in my eyes. It's just because I'm too scatterbrained. Yeah. And so I'm in the season of focus and saying no to a lot of stuff. Yeah. You know, like, even in real estate, there's commercial this, short-term rental this, or whatever the case may be.
Oh yeah, it's always a shiny object.
100%.
Yeah.
So I'm focused.
So many people go like a mile wide and an inch deep.
Yeah.
But I think it's best to go a mile deep, an inch wide.
Agreed.
You know, like, just go really deep on what you've got going on.
Agreed.
Because that's where you have advantages that develop. Because very few people are willing to put in the amount of hours and time into a specific thing, right? It's like very common that people are distracted. They want to try new things.
Absolutely.
But yeah, that's really cool to hear you say. And I feel the same way. Yeah. Definitely, it's hard for me to do that. But I feel like it's going to be to my advantage.
For sure, and that's where the compounding effects come in. You know, I think if you've only been doing it for a year or two, right? You're like, okay, well, I see that it's hard, and like every business is hard. So like you got to get through the valley of despair. You know, like, you know, there's no more uninformed optimism. Like, you know what you're dealing with, and so like getting through the other side of that is what I'm focusing on.
Do you live alone? Do you have pets? Do you have family? Like, are any of them involved with this, or is this just totally you?
I mean, I have friends and stuff like that that are in the business, that are in my areas and stuff like that, but I don't have any of the family in the business yet. Yeah. You know, that's always a fine line to kind of cross, you know, like making sure that you can, I don't know if I'm best at separating that yet. You know? I kind of want to keep it church and state. Yeah, I got you. What advice would you give to somebody listening that's been listening to a lot of podcasts, but hasn't really scored their first deal yet? I would say just focus on, I mean, a lot of the opportunities in general, like, it's there. So like, there's so many ways to get deals, or if that's your goal to get deals, I would say to truly just focus on one thing, drown out the noise, and like, don't keep listening on other ideas, and don't keep jumping from bridge to bridge to bridge. Like, just build one bridge across, you know? So like we talked about with cold calling, if you're gonna start cold calling, like, get a deal with cold calling. Yeah. You know, don't feel like you need to go start doing Facebook ads or this, that, and the other. Like, get a deal doing one thing, and then just put in the volume.
One of the tough things when you're beginning is you don't know how much volume is required. Yeah. You might make 1,000 calls and hear 1,000 no's. Right. And it seems like it wouldn't work. Right. Maybe it doesn't work in your market, or maybe it doesn't work for new people anymore. People always get these in their head, right? But how many no's does it take for you to get a yes, would you say?
You know, it really depends, right? Like, it depends on your skill set, the marketing channel, right? Things like that. But I think that if there's something to take away, truthfully, like, all these marketing channels do work. Even if you just drive around and go cold call people, it may take a lot more no's, but like, I think if you just can be honest with yourself and say, okay, it does work. It does work for somebody. Maybe my skill's not there. Maybe it may take a little bit longer and I have to do 10 times the amount of volume. I think you just have to have proper expectations set and figure out, like, okay, if this takes me 6 months of doing it outside my 9 to 5, like, once you get proof of concept, then that'll be like your inner, you know, okay, yes, this does work, and you can double down, but you just got to know it's going to take a lot of volume. Yep. And like, set those expectations appropriately, which I didn't do in the beginning, which made it a lot harder, you know, because you're like, okay, I go make 10 calls, I should get a deal. It's like, that's just not how it works. So I think it just depends on your skill set. You could call 3 houses and maybe get a deal, but like, that's unlikely. Right. You know? Yeah.
So for anyone listening, really just keep in mind, you have to find somebody in your market that's got a lot of deals under their belt, and find out, well, how many calls do they have to make? Yeah. And then double it, at least. At least for a benchmark of how much effort you should expect to put in.
Right. And then who knows what they're doing, right? Like, figure out, like, okay, do they have cold callers? Are they making thousands of calls today? And then they're getting those leads, and then they're calling out. Like, it's different for everybody. Right. So like, just to go say, hey, go make 100 calls and you'll get a deal, like, that's just not fair. I think just, like you said, talk to somebody that's doing deals in their market, figure out maybe if you can help them or what they're doing, and then just go and do double the work.
Got it. Well, thank you so much for sharing on this podcast.
Appreciate it.
What's a main thing you want to get away from this, you know, taking the drive from Orlando to Sarasota here today, and meeting with Collective Genius?
They're the best. So I love that I learn something new every time. It's one of those things I need to take like one thing and go implement. The biggest thing for me is, I would say, growing appropriately again. You know, like how to grow a business that I enjoy every day, not something that like makes me stressed out and not want to get back to.
Yeah.
So having like a proper end goal in mind and not just having a bunch of vanity metrics, you know, the best way to go about doing that. So like we talked about, having like a net income goal as opposed to just saying, oh, I'll do 100 deals. What's the best way for me to grow and kind of continue doing that?
Got it. Well, I'm sure you'll get that by coming to this group. It's an amazing group. And you've got to be at the top of Select, right? Doing 64 deals in a year. The next level up is what, 50 to 100 deals per year.
Yeah,
So,
but it's, once again, it's all about revenue, and it's all about, you know, the volume in that regard. So we had a lot of skinny deals, and so just because I could say I did 64 doesn't mean we did a whole lot of, you know, net
there might be
profit
somebody
per se.
more profitable here that you could learn from.
100%.
Yeah.
There's guys that probably did 20 deals that made way more than I did, you know? So it's one of those things where there's so many different ways to look at this business.
Got it. Well, thanks for taking some time this Sunday again. I really appreciate it, man.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Aiden.
Thanks for listening to the DealMachine Real Estate Investing Podcast. Please leave us a review and follow along wherever you're listening to your podcast.